The note on the tablet day began quietly for Alexandra Grant. The morning light slipped through the curtains of her art studio, casting long shadows across unfinished canvases. Brushes lay scattered on the floor, colors drying on their tips. She had been painting late into the night, trying to drown her thoughts in work, but nothing silenced the questions in her heart. For weeks, she had sensed a distance between herself and Keanu Reeves. Not distance in words, because Keanu rarely spoke much to begin with, but distance in presence. He still smiled gently, still asked if she had eaten, still offered to carry heavy boxes when her hands were full. But his eyes sometimes wandered far away, as if he was carrying a weight she could not see. That morning, Alexandra found something unusual. A folded piece of paper sat on her table. Keanu's handwriting, neat and careful, was on the front. "For you." Her breath caught. Keanu was not a man of notes or letters. He believed in actions more than words, in showing rather than telling. So if he had written something, it meant the words mattered. With trembling hands, Alexandra opened the paper. The note was short, almost painfully simple. "I need to step away for a while. Please don't search for me. There are things I must face alone. But remember, this is not the end." Her chest tightened. Her first instinct was fear. Had something happened to him? Was he sick? Was he in danger? But the words held no finality. They were not a goodbye. They were a pause, a silence that carried meaning. Alexandra sank into her chair, the note shaking in her hands. Questions stormed her mind. Why hadn't he spoken to her directly? Why had he left without explanation? And most of all, what was he facing that he couldn't share with her? The world outside her studio moved as usual. People walked their dogs, cars honked in the distance, the city lived on. But for Alexandra, time stood still. Later that day, a friend called, mentioning that Keanu had been spotted near a quiet cemetery on the edge of town. Alexandra's heart clenched. She knew which one. He had taken her there once, years ago, when they talked about grief and the people they had lost. She debated going. The note had been clear, "Don't search for me." But her heart fought against her reason. Still, she waited. That night, she sat by the window, Keanu's note on her lap. She traced each word with her finger, whispering them softly as if they might answer her questions. Not the end. Those 3 words lingered in her heart. She didn't know whether to feel comfort or fear. The next morning, she found something else. Another note slid quietly under her door while she slept. This one read, "I will explain soon. For now, trust me." Her tears came then, soft and silent. She realized Keanu wasn't pushing her away. He was protecting her from something. But what? Inside, she knew one truth: Keanu had always carried pain differently than others. Quietly, with dignity, never asking for pity. He bore his scars like hidden maps of places no one else had seen. And now, whatever he was facing, he had chosen to carry it alone. But Alexandra also knew her own heart. She could respect his silence, but she couldn't ignore the storm inside her. She whispered into the empty studio, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Keanu, whatever this is, you don't have to face it alone. I'll wait, but I'll also find you if I have to." The note on the table remained, its words sharp and haunting. And so, their story began not with a dramatic goodbye, but with a quiet piece of paper that held more weight than 1,000 spoken words. A note that would change everything. Asterisk. The reason for his silence. A second note stayed in Alexandra's hand long after the sun had risen. She read it again and again, each word pulling her deeper into the silence Keanu had chosen. "I will explain soon. For now, trust me, trust." She whispered the word to herself, tasting its weight. She trusted him more than anyone in the world. But trust did not quiet the fear that grew inside her chest. By midday, Alexandra decided she could no longer sit still. She needed to know why Keanu had stepped away. She remembered the cemetery her friend mentioned. It wasn't just any place. It was where he had taken her years ago, when he opened his heart about lost his family, the tragedies that had shaped him, the wounds that never healed. With a deep breath, she drove there. The cemetery was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of pine and earth. She walked slowly through the rows of stones, her eyes scanning for him, and then she saw him. Keanu was kneeling by a grave, his shoulders slightly hunched, his hand resting gently on the cold stone. He didn't move when she approached. He didn't even look up. His silence spoke louder than words. "Keanu," she whispered softly. He turned, surprised but not angry. His eyes were red, not from lack of sleep, but from tears he had tried to hide. "I told you not to search for me," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but it carried a tired edge. I couldn't stay away, she answered, her own voice trembling. I found your notes. I read your words, but they only gave me questions, not answers. Why are you here, alone? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed, his gaze returning to the stone. This is where I come when I need to face the parts of me that never heal, he admitted. The grief, the memories, the parts of my life I don't let the world see. I didn't want you to carry it with me. I thought if I stayed silent, I could protect you from it. Alexandra's heart broke at his words. She knelt beside him, her hand brushing his. Protect me? Keanu, you don't have to protect me from your truth. I'd rather stand in your storm than watch you drown in it alone. His eyes softened, but the pain remained. It's not just grief, Alexandra. There's more. Someone reached out to me last week. Someone from my past. They want answers, and I don't even know if I have them. Her breath caught. Who? He shook his head. I can't tell you yet. Not until I know what's real. That's why I needed space. That's why I left you that note. The weight of his words pressed into her, but instead of fear, she felt determination. Then let me walk beside you until you do know. Don't push me out, Keanu. Let me in. For a long time, they stayed there in silence. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying away the words they couldn't yet speak. Finally, Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled out another folded piece of paper. I wrote this before I came here, he said, placing it gently into her hand. I wasn't sure if I'd give it to you, but maybe it's time. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The note was longer than the first two, his handwriting steady but heavy. Sometimes I feel like the world expects me to be stronger than I really am. I carry grief quietly because I don't want to burden anyone else. But you are the one person I don't want to lose by sharing the truth. Still, I'm afraid if I show you the deepest parts of me, you'll walk away. But if you're reading this, then maybe it means I found the courage to let you see me fully. Not the man on the screen, not the one the world imagines, but the one who still aches. And I hope you will stay. Tears blurred Alexandra's vision as she read his words. She pressed the note to her chest, her voice breaking. Keanu, I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. For the first time in days, his shoulders eased. He looked at her not with the guarded calm he showed the world, but with raw gratitude. And in that moment, Alexandra realized the truth his silence was never about pushing her away. It was about testing whether love could survive the weight of honesty, as she was ready to prove that it could. The stranger from the past days after the cemetery visit felt different. Alexandra carried Keanu's note close to her heart, reading it late at night when the silence became too heavy. Every word reminded her that he had trusted her with a part of himself he had kept hidden for so long. Yet, one question remained unanswered: who was the person from his past that had reached out to him? Keanu didn't speak of it again. He returned to her studio a few times, quiet but present, watching her paint as if the rhythm of her brush grounded him. They shared meals in silence, their bond deeper than words. But Alexandra could feel the weight still pressing on him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, there was a knock at her door. Alexandra opened it, expecting a neighbor or perhaps a delivery. But standing there was a stranger, an older man with tired eyes and a hesitant smile. I'm looking for Keanu, the man said softly. Alexandra's chest tightened. Who are you? Before the man could answer, Keanu appeared from behind her, his expression unreadable. His body went still, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. It's been a long time, the man said, his voice trembling. Too long? Keanu didn't respond immediately. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened, and Alexandra could see the storm rising inside him. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and careful. Why now? The man stepped forward, his hands shaking. Because the past doesn't stay buried. I thought I could live without facing it, but I can't anymore. I need you to know the truth. About her. Alexandra's heart skipped. She looked between them, confused. About who? Keanu's eyes stayed locked on the man. My sister. He whispered. The word hit Alexandra like a stone. She had never heard him speak of a sister. Keanu had shared stories of loss, of parents, of friends gone too soon, but never this. The man's voice broke the silence. I was with her, Keanu, in those last moments, and I failed her. I kept that failure to myself all these years, but it's been eating me alive. She wanted you to know something before she passed. I never gave you the note she wrote. Keanu's entire body stiffened. Alexandra reached for his hand instinctively, grounding him. A note. The man nodded, pulling a small, weathered envelope from his coat pocket. I kept it hidden. I thought I was protecting you. But I see now, I was only protecting myself from guilt. Keanu stared at the envelope, his face unreadable. Finally, he took it with trembling hands. The paper was old, edges worn, but her handwriting was still clear. Alexandra watched as he unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the faded words. His lips parted, but no sound came. When he finished reading, he pressed the note against his chest. His shoulders shaking. Alexandra whispered gently, "What does it say?" He closed his eyes, his voice breaking. She wrote, "Don't carry my pain with you. Live, Keanu. Live for me, not for my absence." Tears slipped silently down his cheeks. Alexandra wrapped her arms around him, holding him as tightly as she could. She could feel the years of silence, the years of unspoken grief, breaking open inside him. The man who had delivered the note lowered his head, shame in his eyes. "I should have given it to you long ago. I can never undo what I did, but I hope you can forgive me." Keanu didn't answer. He couldn't. Not yet. But Alexandra spoke for him, her voice calm but steady. Sometimes forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's about freeing the future. Maybe this is the beginning of that. Keanu leaned into her embrace, his voice barely above a whisper. "All these years, I thought her silence was my burden to carry. But she had spoken. She left me words I was never allowed to see. All this time, I was living half a truth. And in that moment, Alexandra realized the note Keanu had left her was only the beginning. There was another note now, one written years ago, one carrying a message he had needed all along. But with the truth uncovered, new questions rose. Why had this man kept it hidden for so long? What else was buried in the past? The storm was not over. It had only begun. The betrayal revealed the old envelope still rested in Keanu's trembling hands. He had read the words, but they echoed inside him again and again. "Don't carry my pain with you. Live, Keanu. Live for me, not for my absence." His sister's voice felt alive again, even though years had passed. Alexandra sat close beside him, her hand on his arm, her eyes searching his face. She had never seen him like this, so raw, so fragile. The weight of years pressed against his chest, but it was more than grief. It was the sting of betrayal. Keanu finally lifted his gaze to the man who had delivered the letter. His voice was low, controlled, but it carried the edge of fire. "Why did you keep this from me?" The man's shoulders sagged. "I thought I was sparing you. Your sister was in pain. I didn't want you to live with the guilt of not being there in her last moments." Keanu's jaw tightened. "But it wasn't your choice to make. Those were her words, her gift, and you buried them. You buried her truth." The man winced, his voice breaking. "I was weak. I couldn't face you. I couldn't face my own shame. I thought if I hid it, the pain would fade. But it didn't," Alexandra said firmly, her voice calm but strong. "It grew, for both of you. Hiding the truth only deepens the wound." Keanu stood then, his tall frame casting a shadow across the room. His fist clenched, but his eyes glistened. "All these years, I lived believing her silence was mine to carry. Every moment of happiness felt stolen. Every laugh carried guilt. You stole her last mercy from me, and you call it weakness?" The man's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I can't undo it. I can only bring it to you now, hoping that maybe it frees you." The silence stretched heavy. Alexandra rose and stepped closer to Keanu. She touched his hand gently, grounding him. "Keanu, listen to me. You have the letter now. Her words reached you, even if they came late. Don't let the delay steal their meaning." Keanu's eyes softened as he looked at her. His breath shook as he whispered, "I don't know if I can forgive him." "You don't have to." "Not yet," Alexandra replied gently. "Forgiveness is a journey, not a command. What matters is that her voice finally found you. Let that be your light, not his shadow." Keanu closed his eyes. For a moment, the room seemed to grow still, holding its breath. Then he placed the letter carefully on the table, almost as if it were sacred. He turned back to the man. "Leave." The man nodded silently, shame carving deep lines into his face. He slipped out the door, his footsteps fading, leaving behind the weight of his confession. The room fell quiet again, only the sound of Alexandra's soft breathing beside him. Keanu lowered himself into the chair, his body suddenly heavy. Alexandra knelt before him, taking his hands into hers. "Keanu," she said softly, "you've carried grief longer than anyone should. But now you have her words. You don't have to live under the shadow of silence anymore. You can live in her light. His lips parted, but his voice was fragile. How do I start? After all this time, how do I begin again? She squeezed his hands gently. You don't have to begin alone. We'll start together. One step, one day, one truth at a time. His eyes softened, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry freely, not silent tears hidden in the corners of his eyes, but deep, shaking sobs that had been buried for too long. Alexandra held him, her arms strong around him, her own tears falling quietly. In that moment, the past did not vanish, but something shifted. The burden of silence began to lift. Yet even as Keanu clung to the letter, a quiet thought stirred in Alexandra's mind. If one truth had been hidden for so long, could there be more buried beneath? Because sometimes betrayal comes not only from silence, but from the secrets no one dares to speak. Another secret surfaced that night after the man left. Alexandra stayed close to Keanu. His sister's letter lay on the table between them, its fragile paper holding more weight than any stone. He sat in silence, his gaze fixed on the folded page, as if afraid that if he looked away, her words might vanish. Alexandra broke the quiet first. Keanu, I know this hurts, but I also know this can be the beginning. Her words freed you from blame. They gave you permission to live. He nodded faintly, but his eyes stayed distant. I want to believe that. What if one truth was hidden for so long? What else was kept from me? Her heart clenched at his words. She knew he was right. Secrets rarely come alone. The next morning, Alexandra returned to her studio, hoping painting would clear her mind. But when she opened the door, she found an envelope slipped under it. Number, name, no return address, just her name written in bold letters. Her stomach turned as she picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was rough, hurried, almost angry. If you really love him, ask him about the money. Ask him about the deal that cost more than he ever admitted. The truth is darker than the letter. Alexandra's hand shook. She read it 3 times, each time the words sinking deeper. She didn't want to believe it, but the voice inside her whispered, someone wanted this to reach you. Someone wants you to know more. That evening, she sat across from Keanu at the small kitchen table. The letter from his sister was still there, as if it refused to leave his side. She took a deep breath, her voice hesitant. Keanu, something else came today. Another note. He looked up sharply. From who? She slid it across the table. He read it slowly, his jaw tightening with every word. Finally, he set it down, his hands curling into fists. I knew this would happen, he whispered. The moment the first truth came out, the rest would follow. People can't resist stirring the ashes. Alexandra's voice trembled. Is it true? Was there a deal? Something you didn't tell me? His silence was long, heavy. Finally, he nodded once. Yes. Her breath caught. Then tell me, please. He leaned back, his face etched with pain. Years ago, before my sister passed, I made a deal to protect her. She needed treatments we couldn't afford. I worked, I sold, I gave everything I had. But it still wasn't enough. So I borrowed money from someone I shouldn't have. And when she was gone, I didn't just lose her. I was left with debts that took years to clear. Debts that came with threats, with shadows I never spoke about. Alexandra's eyes filled with tears. You carried that alone? All this time? He nodded. I didn't want you or anyone to see me as weak, as broken. I wanted you to see only the man who could carry the weight, not the one who was crushed under it. She reached across the table, grabbing his hand firmly. Keanu, weakness isn't in needing help. It's in believing you don't deserve it. You gave everything for her. That isn't weakness, that's love. His eyes glistened, but he looked away. Love doesn't pay debts. Love doesn't erase mistakes. I thought if I kept it buried, it would fade. But secrets, they don't fade. They wait. Alexandra's grip tightened. Then let's stop waiting. Let's face it. Together, for the first time, he allowed her words to settle in his heart. The walls he had built over years of silence began to crack, but deep inside, Alexandra wondered who had sent the second note. Who knew enough about his past to drag it back into the light now? And more importantly, why now? The answer, she knew, would change everything. Asterisk, the final truth second note still burned in Alexandra's mind long after Keanu's confession. She had heard his voice tremble as he spoke about debts, threats, and the choices he made for his sister. He had carried it all in silence, thinking it was shame, but she saw it for what it was, love. Yet one question would not leave her. Who sent the note? 2 nights later, the answer came. Alexandra was closing her studio when she saw a shadow outside. A figure stood by the gate, waiting. Her heart raced as she stepped closer, but before fear could overtake her, the man spoke. You shouldn't trust everything he tells you. His voice was rough, bitter. Alexandra tightened her grip on her bag. Who are you? The man stepped into the dim light. He was younger than the first messenger, his eyes sharp, his face hardened by anger. I'm the one who sent the note, he said, and I'm the one who deserves the truth, not you. Alexandra's voice wavered but stayed firm. Why send it to me? Why not face him directly? The man's lips curled. Because Keanu won't listen to me. I was part of that deal years ago. I was the one who gave him the money. He's been painting me as the villain ever since. But the truth? I helped him. And when his sister passed, he shut me out and left me to clean up the mess. Alexandra's chest tightened. The man's words were heavy, but his tone was poisoned with bitterness. You're saying he owes you? His eyes narrowed. He owes me more than he admits. And if he can't face it, maybe you'll finally see who he really is. Before Alexandra could answer, footsteps echoed. Keanu appeared behind her, his face calm, but his eyes burning with quiet fire. You don't belong here, Keanu said firmly. The man sneered. So you finally show your face. Tell her the truth, Keanu. Tell her I saved you, too. Keanu's voice was steady, but heavy with memory. You didn't save me. You trapped me. Yes, you gave me money, but not out of kindness. You charged me interest you knew I could never pay. You let others threaten me when I fell behind. You turned my desperation into profit. Alexandra's breath caught. The man's expression faltered, his bitterness twisting into defensiveness. You agreed. No one forced you. Keanu stepped closer, his voice still calm, but sharp enough to cut through the night. I agreed because I would have done anything for my sister. I would have sold my soul if it meant giving her one more chance. And maybe I did. But don't stand here pretending you were my savior. You were part of the weight I carried, and I won't let you put it on her. The man's face hardened, but he had no words left. With one last glare, he turned and walked into the darkness. Silence fell. Alexandra turned to Keanu, her heart pounding. Why didn't you tell me all of it? He sighed, his shoulders heavy. Because I didn't want you to see me as a man broken by mistakes. I wanted you to see only the parts of me that were strong. She stepped closer, her voice firm, her eyes glistening. Keanu, the strongest part of you is not the mask you wear. It's the truth you carry. Even broken, even scarred, you are more than enough. His lips parted, his eyes softening as her words reached him. For the first time, he allowed himself to breathe freely, as if the years of silence had finally lifted. Slowly, he pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Not an old letter, not a secret note this time, his own words. He placed it in Alexandra's hands. I wrote this yesterday, he said quietly, not because I planned to leave, but because I wanted you to know if I ever get lost in my own silence again. These are the words I want you to hold. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The note was simple, but every word carried his heart. Thank you for seeing me. Not the star, not the mask, but the man. I don't want to walk alone anymore. If you'll have me, I want to walk with you through the shadows, through the storms, into whatever comes next. Tears streamed down Alexandra's cheeks as she pressed the note to her chest. You don't need to ask, Keanu. I've already chosen to walk with you, he exhaled, a small smile breaking through the years of weight, and for the first time in a long time, he looked not like a man burdened by grief, but like a man stepping into the light. Together, they stood in the quiet night. No more secrets, no more hidden notes, only truth and the promise of a future they would carry side by side. And that single note written not out of fear, but out of love had truly changed everything.